Oh, oh God. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Gabester here. This is the Heroic Healer Guide for Immerseus, the first heroic boss in Siege of Orgrimmar. This guide should assist all healer players with the basics of this encounter and how to successfully get through it and do your job. So let's get started. So the most important mechanic for this fight on Heroic, for healers as well as the rest of the raid really, is Swelling Corruption and Shaw Corruption. So during the normal phase while you're fighting Immerseus directly, he will gain a stack of Swelling Corruption. The number of stacks on this is equivalent to half of his total corruption or energy at the time. So when you first engage and he has 100 energy, his stack count for Swelling Corruption will be at 50. And this will go down, of course, as the fight progresses. Now, every time a player makes a direct attack against the boss, a stack will be removed, and this will transfer to the player in the form of a stacking dot, which does heavy shadow damage every second for 6 seconds. And the damage from this stacks up very rapidly, so you can see on screen a rough estimate of the damage per second based on the stack count. So as a healer, obviously, this is extremely important to monitor and heal players that are afflicted by it. The problem is that while this is dispellable with magic dispels, it is going to be applied to the majority of your players, at least everyone that's attacking the boss, which should be everyone that's not a healer. For this reason, coming up with a sound strategy to manage this dot stack and damage is extremely important, especially early on when these stacks, again, were going to be distributed rapidly because the energy and the stack count on the boss is very high. So the way we decided to do it was to utilize a form of a raid cooldown for the first round and then personal cooldowns plus dispels for the second round, and back and forth, kind of rotate this. So things like Revival from a Mistweaver Monk, if you have one, are extremely strong because they can reset all the stacks on everyone instantly. But if you don't have that, then you have to use manual dispels, personal dispels, all that good stuff. So as a healer, do your best to monitor the players that tend to get stacks quickly and dispel them when they reach a certain threshold. Beyond that, it's just a matter of using all your cooldowns available to keep the raid topped off. So if your raid is positioned properly, you should be within heal range of everyone during this period. And then once the stacks are dealt with, there'll be a series of congealed Shaw adds which will spawn from them. As a healer, you don't have to deal with these directly. It should just be up to your tanks and your DPS to grab them and kill them off quickly. Another thing to consider is Swirl as a healer. And on normal, this ability obviously exists as well, but on Heroic, depending on your raid setup and position, you may need to actually purposely get hit by this ability. So essentially, this damage actually is not significant enough to kill players, but you just need to make sure that you top everyone off in health before this occurs. Depending on where it spawns, your raid may be forced to touch it and step through it, essentially. But getting hit by Swirl is only around 350,000 damage. So everyone that's topped off can survive a single hit, and people with a cooldown can survive a double hit. So the way that we found works best is, since Swirl always rotates clockwise, if it's coming toward you and you have to go through it, simply run counterclockwise into it, use a personal cooldown if you have one available, and as long as you're full health, you should only take one hit at most and survive it quite easily. Additionally, if you're positioned near the entrance of the room, the hallway there, like we are, it turns out you can actually step back into the hallway slightly and outrange the Swirl effect. So if you're positioned properly as a healer, you can do this as well. Just back up when it's about to hit the raid, and you should avoid it. So mechanically, nothing really changes for a healer on the Submerge phase. You still have to deal with Contaminated Puddles, just like in normal. So tips for that are going to be very class dependent. So it's really up to you to experiment with your various heal abilities for your class and find out which are the most effective at healing up the targets at once. That said, the best thing you can do is go to your assigned quadrant or half of the room, depending on your composition, and find the clump of the contaminated puddles as they come out that's the largest that you can be nearest to. So sometimes you only get a couple, sometimes you can get 3 or 4. Really just depends on the randomness of where they spawn. So in terms of, again, heals themselves that actually work, I can tell you that as a Mistweaver, dropping healing spheres are very effective. You can sort of preemptively drop some under a spawning puddle before it actually appears and is healable, and have it full heal or nearly full heal from that. And then, of course, from there, you can just keep this process going with future ones. Another thing to keep in mind as a healer is that heals will slow their movement speed. So if you can do a couple minor heals on a few different puddles, then you'll give yourself more time to heal them in the future. The counter argument to that point, however, is that the longer it takes you to heal your first target, the longer it is before you get the healing bonus buff. So just like in normal, make sure you're within melee range of those congealed puddles once you heal them up, and then you should have a much easier time with future ones. And this should sort of snowball to make it easier and easier. Ultimately, my goal usually was to try to get 3 every phase. If I could get 3, then that seemed like a reasonable number because we're using 2 healers in total. So their DPS should be handling the majority of their puddles as well. And that really covers it. So healing is really all about controlling the normal phase, dealing with the extra damage and dispels from the corrupted Shaw stacks, and then handling the extra damage on the tanks and the raid from all the adds that spawn. If you're positioned properly, use cooldowns appropriately, you can get through that. We found using Bloodlust early was better because that's the time that you really want to burn the boss to get him to transition before he spawns another set of adds, or gets another stack rather. So adjust accordingly for your own setup, but overall, most of your changes for Heroic as a healer will exist in the normal phase. The Submerge phase is pretty much identical. So, that is a Heroic Healer Guide for Immerseus. As always, good luck, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, please subscribe.